Just a few here and there, spaced out, so they feel naturally scattered.
Hey guys, welcome back. I'm John Correa, and today we're painting a peaceful countryside landscape. This one is all about building up the depth slowly, layer by layer, starting from the distant mountain in the background and working our way to the flowers in the foreground. And if you'd like to follow the full painting process from start to finish, including the reference photo I use, it's all available on my Patreon. Also, check out the Korea art custom brushes I use for this painting, specially designed for acrylic landscapes. Links are down below. So yeah, let's get started.
Alright, as usual, we're using an 8 by 10 inches canvas for this painting. Let's begin sketching. So this is the reference photo I edited and printed. It's actually the same size of my canvas, which makes it way easier to get the proportions right. So here's what I do. I just use my finger and my pencil to measure each element and then transfer it into the canvas. Like here, I place my finger at the bottom of the reference photo, and then I use the tip of my pencil to find where the horizon line sits. Then I place my finger right into the horizon and move the tip of my pencil up to the top of that mountain, just to measure how tall it is in the reference. There you go. And same for the other elements. Here I use the edge of the reference photo and place my finger exactly on that edge. You don't really need to get the exact positions of every little detail. Me personally, I just try to get the overall composition and placement, like where the mountain sits, the position of horizon, and just the overall shapes. I honestly don't care if I don't get the exact 100% location of each element, as long as it's close and the whole thing still makes sense visually. That's good enough for me. But yeah, this method works best when you're painting on a small canvas like this. This one's 8 by 10 inches. If you're working on a bigger canvas, there are actually a lot of other techniques you can use. Some artists use projectors, some prefer using grids to map things out more accurately. But even if you're painting on a large canvas, printing your reference on a small paper still helps a lot. How it works is hold the printed photo and just move farther away from the canvas until the size kinda matches visually. Same method, just adjusted to fit the scale. So it's really about finding what works for you. No strict rules here, just helpful tricks to make the process easier. Alright, let's begin laying down the acrylic, starting with primary blue, deep green permanent, primary red, cadmium yellow medium hue, titanium white, and black. So I'll be using my custom brushes from Craftamo. I'll put the link down below. So let's start with flat brush. Let's paint the sky first. Let's mix titanium white, touch of blue, red, touch of yellow, more white. Then using sweeping strokes, we can do light X strokes. I'm just gonna black in the whole sky area. Just like that. Alright, so now let's mix the colors for the clouds and also for the mountain, including the different shades we'll need for each layer. Let's start with the clouds. Let's mix white, blue, red. Let's add more red, blue. There you go. Let's mix white, blue, red. And this one is for the distant mountain, the lightest one. Let's add a little bit of yellow. There you go. Now let's have a little more darker for the closer mountain one. There you go. And finally, let's have some highlight. Let's mix yellow, white, and blue. Now let's pick up our number 2 angle brush and start painting the clouds. Let's start with the shadow using the slightest mix. And I'm gonna begin shaping the clouds here, just using small circular strokes to keep everything soft and fluffy. And we can still use the reference to measure things out if needed. For now, this looks flat, but this cloud will really pop later once we add the highlights. So yeah, for now, just keep it soft and subtle. So let's have this pure titanium white. And I'm just gently tapping it downward right over the clouds. Just like that. We will focus most of this on the right side of each cloud, since that's where the light source is coming from. Just control your strokes here. You can actually use different angles of the brush depending on what you need. If you want broader strokes, use the flat side. And for thinner lines or details, you can use the tip or the edge. So now let's mix a bit of that shadow tone into the white to create a nice transition color. This will help blend the shadow and the highlight areas more smoothly. It's like a middle tone that softens the edges between the two, so the cloud doesn't look too harsh or separated. Alright, so after that, let's clean the brush and move on to the mountains. We'll start with the most distant one in the scene. Let's have this color. And again, I'm just measuring things out here. Placing my finger at the horizon line where the grass ends and using the tip of the brush to gauge the height of that far mountain. Then I'll transfer that measurement into the canvas. Just like that. No need for precise strokes on this one. We're just blocking in the shape of the distant mountain. Keep it loose and simple. Just enough to place it in the scene and get the overall form down. Again, let's keep using the measuring technique to see where the structure of the mountain will fall on the canvas. And then as we go down here, let's shift to slightly darker mid-blue tone, just to build that atmospheric effect. We want it to feel like the sunlight is only hitting the upper part of the mountain, while the lower part fades more to the shadow. This contrast will help show depth and give the mountain a more natural sunlit look. Alright, so now let's switch to the small round brush and let's mix this light green into some of the blue, just to tone it down a bit more. And we're gonna add a subtle highlight on the middle mountain. You know, we still want the highlight to feel atmospheric, and adding that touch of blue really helps keep it from looking too vibrant or out of place. You just drag the brush gently across the surface and make sure to leave some gaps between the strokes. You know, that little bit of spacing adds texture and keeps the highlight from looking too flat or solid. It gives the impression of uneven light hitting the mountain, more natural and realistic. And for the darker mountain, I'm gonna use the pure light green mix for the highlight. Since this one is closer to us, the highlight can be a bit more vibrant compared to the distant one. Alright, so now let's clear up some space on the palette. Start mixing the colors we need for the trees and for the grass in the foreground. Let's mix red, yellow, blue, green, add more blue, red. There you go. Alright, so now for the colors in the foreground, let's add yellow here, white, just a little bit, blue. There you go. Let's have another one, more lighter. Let's add white to the mix, yellow. This is not the highlight yet. This is just the first layer or the base layer for the brightest part on the foreground. So now let's grab our flat brush and start laying down the base layer on the foreground. Again, I'm gonna use the reference photo here just to double check the position of the horizon line. You know, it's good to keep checking as we go just to make sure everything still lines up. We want this part to be fast and easy. That's why this flat brush is perfect for that job. No need for precise strokes here. We're just blacking in all the white areas of the canvas. And then as we move down, we're gonna start adding the mid-greens into the foreground. This helps create that gradual shift in value and makes the ground feel more natural. Let's also start adding the dark green here at the bottom. This will really help later on when we paint the flowers. It will create a nice contrast that makes them pop more against the background. Alright, so for now, let's switch to the fan brush and start blackening the trees. Let's have these dark greens, almost black, just to get that deep base tone. Again, I'm checking the position using the reference, making sure the placement of the trees lines up. And we'll start with the trunk. Just position the fan brush vertically, apply light pressure, and gently drag it downward. And for the limbs and leaves, we'll use just the edge of the fan brush. Very lightly tap it to create that broken leaf texture. And as we move down, we'll make the limbs gradually wider. And you can start applying a little more pressure. This helps create that classic pine tree shape. And down here, I'm applying more pressure with the fan brush to get a bigger coverage. This gives the bottom part of the tree that fuller, heavier look, which helps balance out that thin top. Just keep following the shape and let the brush create that natural layered texture as you go. Just be very careful and light with your strokes here. And if you end up with a big blob of paint in this area, don't panic. Just let it dry completely and then cover it up with that background color, which in this case is the color of the clouds. And again, once that dries again, you can go back and rework the limbs in that spot. So no need to stress. Mistakes like that are easy to fix with a bit of layering. Alright, so now we just wait until everything's dry and the foreground here is completely dry now. So we're gonna add another layer over it. Using the flat brush again, we will just repeat the same process we did in the first layer. This time, we're focusing on making everything more solid and even, covering any patchy areas and reinforcing the base colors. Alright, so going back to the reference, we're not only using it to measure the position of every object, we can also use it to check the tonal values. Like right here, you can see it starts getting darker as we move down, so we're actually on the right track. We don't want the lightest area to extend too far down, or it will throw off the lighting. You know, just keep an eye on those subtle shifts in value. They really help guide the painting and keep everything consistent. Alright, so now for the darkest shadow, let's position it right here at the bottom again. You can always check the reference photo to see exactly where the darkest area starts to show. It really helps so you don't get lost while painting. Just build it up slowly and keep that contrast in mind. It will make the lighter parts stand out even more later on, especially the flowers. So now let's mix the colors for the house. Let's mix blue, red, white. There you go. Let's have a little lighter. There you go. And then for the roof, let's mix white, red, yellow. We want to have a kinda muted brown tone here. There you go. And then dark brown, let's mix red, green, and yellow, and some blue. There you go. Then let's have highlights for the roof. Let's mix white, touch of red, and touch of yellow. And now we'll move on to the house, which is our main subject in the painting. So again, we should measure things carefully here, like the top of the roof and the sides and how far it is from the edge of the reference photo. So let's start with the clean number 0 angle brush. Let's load it with this light blue to black in the wall of the house. And I'm measuring as I go, just to keep everything in place, especially the four sides of the wall. It helps keep the structure solid and not wonky. And then using this muted brown for the roof, just a nice toned down color to keep it from standing out too much. We're still keeping everything atmospheric, so nothing too saturated here. Just blocking the shape carefully, still measuring as we go to make sure the angles and the edges line up with the rest of the house. Alright, so now using the 00 small round brush, we're gonna start adding the details on the house. Let's start by mixing black and this dark brown. We're kinda just sketching here with the brush, slowly rendering it and building up the form. And this helps separate the roof from the wall underneath and adds more structure to the shadow. Also right here under the roof, where the sun is hitting but not too much. Then we'll blend it slightly using the color of the wall, just to create a smooth transition between light and shadow. It adds subtle depth without making the contrast too harsh. Alright, so now using this brown, let's start adding the shadows to the roof. We want this to look like old wooden texture. So I'm laying these shadows in a broken, uneven way, like the wooden planks are aged and slightly irregular. Make sure to follow the slope of the roof with your strokes to keep the perspective accurate. So now let's clean the brush and load it with pure white. And we're gonna add the brightest highlight on the wall here. And this highlight will give the wall that nice sunlit glow without overdoing it. And we will add highlights to the roof using this light peach tone. Same process as we did with the shadows, small uneven strokes to mimic that old wooden texture. The goal here is to create a nice contrast between the light and shadow, so the roof feels sunlit and textured. And remember, if you feel like the paint on the brush is getting a bit hard to control, you can always add just a bit of water to loosen it up. Not too much, just enough to help the brush glide more smoothly and keep those strokes light and crisp. Then let's add a bit red here to this brown color. Let's paint the window. I'm still using my small round brush here, just blocking a simple rectangular shape here. Alright, let's clean the brush again. And let's refine the shape of the window using the same color as the wall. We're just cleaning up the edges here, sharpening the lines and fixing any uneven parts. Just like that. Alright, so now let's mix the colors we need for the highlights in the trees and the grass in the foreground. Alright, let's mix white, blue, yellow, more yellow, some red. There you go. Another one, more lighter. And let's have something cooler, not too bright. So we'll add more blue here. There you go. Let's grab our fan brush and load it with this base green highlight. We'll start tapping it in to create those leaf highlights. Keep it light and gentle. And this layering creates that nice broken leaf texture. I'm just loading the corner edge of the brush here. See that? And the stiff bristles of this fan brush really help achieve that textured broken look in the leaves. So yeah, I don't use a soft fan brush for this kind of detail. It just doesn't give me the same effect. So yeah, we will place the highlights mostly on the right side of the trees, since that's where the sunlight is hitting. I'm also leaving some gaps in between to keep that natural broken texture. So now let's take some of this muted blue tone and start painting a visible tree trunk right here. Just drag the brush down vertically to suggest that trunk shape. Right, and then using the lighter yellow-green, we're gonna add another layer to the trees. Same process, we're just gonna tapping it on lightly, focusing on the sunlit areas. But we're not gonna covering the base highlight completely. We still want some of that previous layer to show through so it adds depth and variation. Think of this as the brighter glow, just catching the outer edges of the leaves. So now let's switch to the fan brush and load it with this cool mid-green tone. And we'll start highlighting the foreground. I'm holding the brush vertically here and using downward strokes, just back and forth to suggest blades of grass. And as I go, I'm changing the angle slightly every now and then, so the strokes don't all go in the same direction. And right here at the bottom, we can even start creating some short individual leaves. Just little flicks of the fan brush. And yeah, for those blades of grass that are a bit closer but still sitting in the middle ground, make sure to keep them short. You don't want them to compete with the detail in the foreground. Just quick small strokes to suggest texture without drawing too much attention. And now let's add some yellow into the mix. We're gonna start introducing the flowers. And we'll begin with these bright yellow ones. I'm using the same brush strokes we used earlier for the three highlights. Just that soft horizontal tapping using the fan brush. But this time, I'm leaving more space in between each tap. We want the flowers to feel scattered. Think of them as little pops of color peeking through the grass. Alright, going back with the small round brush, and we'll add another layer of highlights in the middle ground, using this brighter green highlight. And this layering gives it a nice glow and a more natural build-up of light. Alright, so now for the bigger flowers, let's mix white, red, touch of yellow, touch of blue. There you go. Let's have another one, cooler one. So let's add more blue here. Let's mix another one, more darker. Let's mix blue, red, white, more blue, more red, there you go. And lastly, more purplish, so we'll add more red here. There you go. Alright, so now using the 00 small round brush, let's take some of this light tone mix with white, and we're gonna add a brighter layer of flowers on top. I'm just flicking the brush, almost like a light tap. Just a few here and there, spaced out, so they feel naturally scattered. Alright, so now let's move on to the cooler tones. And since the bottom part of the painting is catching less sunlight, adding these cooler flowers really helps push that shadowed feel. And because this area is also closer to the viewer, we want the flower to look a bit bigger. So I'm going in with slightly bigger strokes now. Let's mix slightly deeper pink, using white and red, just for the highlight. I'm kinda creating an arc shape here. It's like I'm curving the brush just slightly as I tap it, just to give each flower a bit more shape and movement. And yes, totally fine to make them a bit chunkier and more pronounced, since these are the closest object to the viewer's eye. And then let's mix these greens to get a slightly darker green. And we're gonna place these darker grasses right on top of the darkest area in the foreground. This will really help break up that flatness, but still keep it looking like it's sitting in shadow.
Alright, we're done. I really enjoy painting this one, and I hope you did too. And again, if you want to see the full step-by-step process, along with the reference photo, you can find all that in my Patreon. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I'll see you in the next one. Psh.